Hey everybody, I'm Garcia, and today we're taking a look at the latest expansion to Imperial Settlers, Empires of the North. This is Egyptian Kings. We've already got quite a few very interesting, engaging expansions to this wonderful tableau building and combo building card game. So we've got over here the Japanese islands. That was the first one. After that, we got Roman banners, and we got barbarian hordes. Each of these with 2 decks, completely playable on their own against any other deck. And now we've got Egyptian Kings here, with again 2 new decks, a few new island cards, just like the other ones. And the main question that comes to mind for me is, always every time one of these comes out, are they still able to find interesting new mechanisms to bring to the table? Are these decks going to feel unique? Are they going to be easy to approach? Is the difficulty going to have to go up in order to make them interesting and unique? Well, let's go ahead and answer that question right now, shall we? Or at least, right after the overview. I do want to say I'm not going to go over the original core game. I'm just going to show you what's in here. Show you a couple of the cards, and then on the other side of that overview, then I'll tell you what I think. Here we go. In the expansion box, you're going to be getting a rulebook, of course. You're also going to be getting 2 distant island cards, 3 near island cards. You can just shuffle those into their respective decks. And then you got, of course, 2 new clans over here, 2 new decks to play with. And they're very interesting. And they're actually pretty straightforward, considering this is already the 3rd expansion to this game. In fact, I think the very first one that came out, the Japanese factions, were more complicated, and it's a little trickier to wrap your head around than the way these play out. They're very straightforward. So let's take a look at one of these first, okay? In this one, you are going to have your starting cards over here, like so. And the main push, the main drive behind this one is that these characters do not normally produce any fruit and do not produce any lumber. And the deck has to find another way around that. So the way that works is a lot of these cards are going to allow you to plant those things and then harvest them later, okay? That entails grabbing a card from the deck and tucking it underneath one of these production locations. And there's 2 different kinds. The backs of these show you 2 different symbols. This one with no fruit on it is going to produce lumber. And then this one with the colorful dots and the fruits there is going to give you, well, fruit in the game. So if you tuck some of these under here, and by the way, when you are doing your lookout phase, any cards you don't keep, you get to put into these locations. Only 1 per when you're doing that, but they could build up. Well, another thing that the deck is going to do is allow you to put little workers in these top corners here. And when you harvest this location, if there is a worker assigned to this card, you are going to get the 2 stone and the lumber and the fruit, and then these cards are removed from that location. And of course, using those 2 mechanisms of assigning the workers and putting out the fruit and the lumber cards, then they use all sorts of effects and events and abilities to give you victory points based on those abilities, all right? So a lot of that is going to happen, right? Like so this one here is a constructive play card that says instant, discard up to 3 fruit or up to 3 lumber cards of these attached to something to gain 1 victory point for each. Additionally, you may move 1 worker from one location to another one of these. And some of the cards in the deck also are the kind of card that can have a little worker assigned to them, such as this one here, which is an action that says spend 3 different resources to gain 2 victory points. If a worker is assigned, draw 1 card and keep it or attach it to one of these 3 starting locations, the fields. So very good stuff, very straightforward. It's a nice way to, it's an interesting sort of workaround to a faction that does not make any fruit any other way, and therefore you're not going to have a lot of ability for the worker placement part of the game and reutilizing your action tokens. So neat, works well, very smooth and straightforward. Now this one over here I actually like a little bit more. This is my favorite of the 2. And the way this works is you begin with 2 ships, but you have, because of the some of the cards in the deck, you have the ability to gain another ship, and you also have the ability to gain another action token. So you can have up to 3 if you're playing with this faction, if that card comes out and you choose to pursue it. And the interesting thing here is twofold, okay, besides those things. Every card, or not every card, but many of the cards are going to allow you to build them normally. So you spend to build 1 sheep, 1 stone, and build that. Or you can use the card as a boost. And so in this case, this one here says sail, so you can spend those to build it, or sail to gain 2 different resources. So I sail, I use this for 2 different resources, discard it as a boost card, and then go ahead and sail. And that's very engaging. I love the boost cards in this game. It's one of my favorite aspects of the game. And this deck has, because of its construction, tons of them that you can build or you can use as boosts. Of course, those cards are extremely versatile and very flexible. So there's got to be a drawback to that ability to play, so many of the cards as one thing or the other. What is that drawback? Well, very interesting. Up in this corner here, it says assign to sustain, and then it gives you some sort of resource. In this case, this one happens to be stone. What this means is this card during the cleanup phase at the end of the round is going to go away unless I've assigned something, whatever it requires, to keep it in play. If it goes away, I'm not going to score it. I'm not going to be able to use its action anymore. I don't get the point for it at the end of the game. So I need to manage how I do this. Which ones come out on the table and I'm okay with losing. Which ones come out and I want to make sure I keep around. One of the opening cards, one of the basic cards, is going to be, you have these 3, but then you also have this one, which is a basic card that lets you take an action, spend 1 worker to assign 1 resource. So as long as you have a worker, you can keep one of your new cards around for rounds around. Above and beyond that, you got to start getting creative. And there are certainly many creative cards in here. I really like the way this works. Sailing is pretty important to this faction, but of course, producing resources to keep all of your new cards around. The actions are very interesting, sometimes quite powerful, again, because you have to go above and beyond if you want to keep the card around for more than 1 turn. So it's really clever. I enjoy this a lot. And again, those 2 things, assigning something to keep it around, it being a boost or normal card, are very easy to understand. If you know how to play the base game, I have to teach you a couple of small tweaks on that, and you are good to go with this. So there you go. That's what is being brought to the table here in this faction, in this expansion, rather. Let's go ahead and go back up top. Let me tell you what I think of it. I got a couple of small issues with the package overall, but they are very, very small, as you'll see. But this is going to get a good rating. I adore this game, and the expansions so far have not really let me down, okay? So let's talk about it. The theme and the setting. I know some folks out there are starting to feel like the Empires of the North title of this game is getting stretched quite a bit. I don't care about that. They can put anybody they want in here, and I'm not going to have a problem thematically finding it that, it's not really Empires of the North anymore. I just don't care about that. So I have no problem with the setting. I like seeing new locations in the world brought to the table, especially when they do mechanically something interesting that ties to that setting, that place in the world. And I think these 2 factions do that, okay? The aesthetics are very good. They brought back the artist that they had for the previous expansions and the core box, okay? So Japanese Island, Roman banners, and the stuff in the core box had the same artist. For Barbarian Hordes, somebody else did the artwork for this one. And while it's good, it's not as good, okay, as in my opinion, as the other one. So they brought back the same artist again for Egyptian Kings, which I think is a great idea, and I really like it. There's a lot of charm in there. There's a lot of cute little touches, so that's very nice. There are a couple of small typos that they missed, I guess, in proofreading, one of them being the title of a card, which is, I think it's Believe, and they misspelled it, it's missing an E in there. And it's, the card shows up a couple of times, they just missed it. So, unfortunately, the proofreading is still a little bit of a problem with some Portal games. So, there is that. It's not, it doesn't feel sloppy, okay? There have been other products for, in Portal's catalog that have felt like they border on sloppy. This doesn't feel that way. I want to make sure that's clear. But there are some typos, okay? Other than that, it looks very nice. The replay value. My only issue here is that these expansions continue to have fewer and fewer cards when it comes to the islands. For example, Japanese Islands, the first one, okay, had 8 new nearby island cards and 6 distant island cards. And then that went down. There were 4 and 2, 4 and 2 for the other ones, and now we have 3 nearby islands and 2 distant islands. I get that they eventually sort of max out. There's only so many different kinds of islands you can make. Still, it would be nice to see more of them injected in there. Maybe new, interesting things that they do, all of that stuff. So there are fewer of them, okay? However, assuming you've been getting these expansions in the right order, you have tons of islands by now. And these 2 new factions, which is really where the replay value comes in, I think are both highly replayable and add something very interesting to the entire experience. So I got no issue with the replay value, except for, again, I wish there were more islands, maybe with some interesting new abilities, all right? The game arc, excellent. The replayability kind of goes hand in hand with this, but these 2 factions play very interestingly, and they are going to, there's like an ebb and flow to the way they go. I really enjoy that about them. I like that some games, you're going to be able to keep a lot of those cards on the table, and you're not assigning a lot, you are assigning a lot of those resources to the cards to keep them in play. Build up your tableau, as I said. Some games you will not do that. In some games you put out a card, you do whatever it says, and then you just don't get around to it, don't have the resources, whatever. The cards wipe away. In some games you're going to be able to take a lot of the worker placement, the action selection stuff. Some games you're not going to be able to do that because of the cards that come up. If you get the right trees, if you get the fruit they need to do that. So I think it works out really well, and they feel very replayable. So I enjoy that about them. Now, ease of play, and this is a biggie, okay? Like I said, it always concerns me. My fear is, boy, these are going to start getting complicated. I got to say, these 2 are pretty easy to understand, and they just make sense right off the bat. I mean, if you've played the core game, you could play both of these, read the rulebook, and you're good to go with both of these right away. There's going to be no hiccups. There's no weirdness about them. Really, it's just an interesting sidestep for each of them, Again, especially, I really like this faction here. The idea of so many cards being one you can play or a boost, it's wonderful, that design choice. So I really enjoy that. I just like the way that works. So ease of play here is to be, commended. It's amazing that they still can make these factions so easy to understand and engaging. Lastly, tactics, luck, strategy. Yes, lots of choices, lots of interesting things to do. Of course, you've got the luck of the draw, like any card game, but you're going to have different things you can, do, paths you can pursue in order to shore up your weaknesses. And there are very clear-cut weaknesses to both of these factions, which I also like. You know what the weaknesses are. The design is clear and clean, so you know what you need to do in order to find solutions to those weaknesses, right? The islands are going to be a big part of that. So finding how to be able to accomplish and do what you want to do is part of the fun, and it is apparent in these 2 what those things are. You just got to go out there and pursue them. So I really, really enjoy this package overall. I think it's a wonderful expansion. Definitely recommend it. Now, I looked up what my previous ratings were for all of these factions, expansions, okay? So Japanese Islands, I rated a 9. Roman Banners, 9.5. Barbarian Hordes, a 9. And this one is going to be getting a 9 as well, okay? So that's a seal of excellence, of course. I guess Roman Banners got a little bit of an extra half a point there. And this one could have easily been there if those small, very, very small issues weren't there. The typos, a few more island cards that seems to be trailing off, right? So But I tell you, these two factions are fantastic. If you like the setting, the Egyptian setting, you're a fan of that, you got to get this one. Even if you're skipping, even if you skipped some of the other ones. It's still kind of baffling to me that the first one that came out, Japanese Islands, is actually, one of those two decks in there, if I'm not misremembering, is actually more complicated than a lot of these other ones that came out after the fact. So, wonderful stuff here. Empires of the North continues to be a very strong game, and I keep making a strong case for why you should check this one out. So there you go, 9 out of 10, like I said. That's it for me, everybody. My name is Z Garcia. I'll see you on the next one.